From Worldwide Technology, this is the AI Proving Ground podcast. Today, it's easy to forget what really powers this digital world of ours. The calls we make, the messages we send, the streaming, the commerce, the critical services we use daily. Everything depends on a vast, invisible network managed by the world's largest service providers. They're the quiet backbone of modern life, and they're under pressure like never before. Margins are shrinking, customers' expectations are rising, and behind it all sits a level of complexity that's almost hard to fathom. Hundreds and thousands of cell sites, millions of alarms, petabytes of data, all of it demanding to run with near perfect reliability. Now, enter AI. In this episode, we're talking with Dave Clough and Yohannes Tafesse, two field CTOs here at WWT, about what happens when artificial intelligence is asked to manage some of the most unforgiving systems on Earth, networks that can't afford to go down. You'll hear how service providers are using AI to improve efficiency and effectiveness of their operations centers, predict outages before they happen, reduce customer churn, and even defend against AI-driven cyber attacks. But you'll also hear why it's not easy, why trust, safety, and governance matter just as much as innovation, and why the lessons these operators are learning about data readiness, ROI, and the human side of AI apply far beyond telecom. So without further ado, let's jump in. Dave and Yohannes, thanks so much for joining us today on the AI Proving Ground podcast. How are the both of you doing today?
Doing great.
Doing great. Thanks for having us, Brian.
Excellent. We are talking today about AI in the service provider space. And I am curious, it seems to be an interesting landscape. You know, the operator business under immense pressure, margins are shrinking, expectations of consumers are rising, revenue streams are having issues. Dave, I'll start with you. Just paint us a picture right now of what the landscape looks like and what is AI doing right now to address some of those concerns?
So one of the key areas that we're seeing AI helping operators today is allowing operators to become more efficient in their operations and deliver better service. And this actually started a few years ago, actually using some machine learning systems with SON, which is self-optimized networking for radio networks that allowed us to have much better radio communications. If you're familiar with the 2G to 3G migration, the 3G to 4G migration was really nice, and it had a lot to do with that technology. We're also seeing the technology starting to come into these very, very complex maintenance and support areas from their NOCs, the Network Operations Center. Most operators have a tremendous amount of alarms. AI is able to come in and actually run through a lot of those alarms, figure out the ones that are meaningful and those that need to be worked on, as well as keeping interaction between the different systems up to date. And this is really, I can't stress this more. Every operator is moving along and having a number of changes and upgrades and solutions happening all the time. And they're buying new systems, they're taking down new systems, and keeping that all correlated and up to date is extremely difficult. AI has some capabilities to actually understand those documentations, those changes, and be able to actually put forward a more efficient interaction and connectivity between those systems, as well as diagnose for a NOC when those systems are out of phase or out of sync or need to be upgraded. And that's been one area that we've seen a tremendous amount of value on that. We've also seen it from being able to help with churn reduction. So being able to identify users that have not had very good experiences. So being able to actually target those people and then tell marketing, well, we really need to give Yohannes or Brian over here some notoriety and give them a coupon or something along those lines to actually get those systems up and operational better. So that's actually been pretty interesting. And I think we're going to see other areas here as well. I've yet to see really operators take AI and bring it to the mass market. But Yohannes, I mean, you've got through a lot of this stuff. I mean, you've done a lot of earlier SON systems, and I think you and I have talked a lot about this. And we've just seen, a number of different areas dealing with information as well as support, but going over the top to top line growth, let's say, where they make new money, we're still finding our way. But I think saving money, being able to optimize, has been a rather good, and we found a number of areas we can do even more work on.
Yeah, Dave, you're absolutely right. In terms of just if I could start with the making money aspect of it, I think a lot of businesses are still kind of figuring out, right? Gen AI has been around for a couple of years now, and the service providers, I mean, they serve hundreds of millions of customers, so there is some real opportunity there to say, hey, what can we offer to our customers? And there is still some deep exploration that's happening, especially leveraging some of the infrastructure they already have, right, that they have invested in. So, and you have to remember, they're looking at both consumers as well as businesses as customers. And there's a lot of opportunity to add value to their business customers through AI. So that's an ongoing discussion. But on the flip side, there is this huge infrastructure that service providers, telcos manage, right? So if you're in the wireless space and you manage 3G, 4G, 5G networks, and you have 100,000 cell sites, that's huge, right? Distributed all over the country. You have the core network, and you provide all sorts of services. So being able to manage this huge infrastructure and optimize it and operate it, there is huge opportunity for AI there. It's been very manual intensive, and that is an area where we're seeing some success with some service providers. AI plus automation, and now you're adding Gen AI for interaction with the network using human language, and being able to create some intent. So we're seeing a lot of success there, and of course, tying that with you pointed churn reduction with customer experience. So being able to define what's a customer experience, as they get to experience different parts of the network during the rush hour, and being able to identify where there are opportunities, maybe prevent churn or maybe upsell. So there is this real synergy going on between how the network looks at customers, how the marketing looks at customers, marketing team, right, operations team, and being able to deliver an end-to-end value. So there's a lot of opportunity where AI could help service providers.
Yeah. I should just quote for some of our listeners here. Churn is it's really a mechanism that Yohannes and I are very close with. So churn is reported by every operator, and really what that is, it's a score of how many subscribers they lost versus how many subscribers they brought on to their network. And if that continues to lose and gain and not have an overall gain, it's not really good for the operator, because it costs them a lot of money to get new subscribers onto their network. Because nowadays, most of the wireless networks are very complementary. They all are similar in capabilities and coverage and capacity, as well as price. So just a little sideline and background on that one. But I think that is something that's been really interesting to see in the market, modernizing the network and being able to offer more and more capabilities, and really seeing the operators start to focus on experience of the user, where in the past, I think it was just about coverage, capacity, rolling systems out. Now AI gives them some really good information back. I think the other thing that's really interesting to me is that there's a tremendous amount of data, and I think you and I were just talking about this a little bit. There's a tremendous amount of data that subscribers have, not subscribers, but operators have in their networks, that has really been untapped. And it's to the point where not any language models have been able to see the insides of that either. And so one of the things that I think you and I have been talking a little bit about is there might be a day where operators will use and build out their own language model based on a lot of their data and the way that they want their network to run. It's almost like building a board member, if I would describe it as another person in the organization that has the persona of the operator, has all the information of the operator, and can use in conjunction with the employee to make sure that they are able to do a better job, understand information better, and then deliver potentially better decisions and better outcomes to the market. So, that's just something I think you talked a little bit about. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yohannes, I wonder, just so we can level set with our listening audience out there that might be in another industry and not necessarily the service provider or telecommunications industry. What lessons do we think can be taken away from this conversation as we dive deeper into the telco networks? Is it just a matter of they're doing all these things at a bigger scale, or what types of lessons should enterprise leaders be taking away from how the service providers, the big, these giant, biggest of the big companies, are treating AI and trying to advance AI?
No, absolutely. That's a really good question, Brian. So, the service providers are looking at AI, like I said, from two perspectives: making money, saving money, and even in the saving money aspect of it, right? So you have your mobile network, this gigantic infrastructure that you have to manage. It's considered a critical infrastructure for the country. And then you have your IT office, and you have marketing, you have HR, and there's a lot of opportunities in that space as well, which is common across the enterprise world as well. So one of the main things that, looking at the size of the investment that the service providers are looking at is being intentional, right? So there's a lot of hype sometimes in terms of the value you can get out of an AI system and what it means. And we all use all sorts of AI systems in our day-to-day lives personally, and, we get some benefit out of it. But being able to be intentional, look at your workflow and where you add value and design accordingly is something that the service providers have to do, because they're dealing with this critical infrastructures, right? So, and then in terms of the adoption, even though a system adds value, if it disrupts the way you do business significantly, all of a sudden, the adoption tends to be a little bit slower, right? There's a lot of caution. Mm-hmm. So making sure that, hey, how do we adopt this in a way that does not impact our day-to-day operations and does not actually lead to loss of efficiency, loss of confidence, is extremely important. The other thing is pulling in all the stakeholders into the discussions, right? So you have the executive sponsors or decision makers that are looking at what value are we creating. You have maybe your data science team that's looking at this. You have your IT organization. Maybe you have to bring in GPUs, and you have to look at the infrastructure. You have the cooling and the power and all that. So everybody coming to the table, looking at this, and after identifying that, going through, hey, let's test it out, let's prove it out, and how do we think about scaling afterwards, is something that I think everybody should look at. That would help with adoption and getting value out of that, implementing AI at an organization level.
Yeah.
I just add to that one. I think the difference is really that an operator is held to higher regard in terms of reliability and performance, but otherwise the actions and the approach are very similar in terms of looking at your data, looking at business needs. The difference is that with an operator, I've got to achieve about 5 nines of operation, and then if I do have an outage that's caused by, let's say, an AI system that doesn't make the right decision, or I let that happen, I have the federal government coming after me, or the FCC, or have other things that come out behind me.
Well, Dave, I'm glad you mentioned that 5 nines, type of scenario. Service provider networks, they are held to a higher regard. There's a lot of critical services that run on these things. There's a lot of businesses that rely on these things. And, we are talking about the need to have that 5 nines reliability. It's not a buzzword. Dave, what makes AI safe enough and reliable enough for that 5 nines environment? What do organizations have to do to get to that point?
Well, really good question. So one of the things that we've seen is the kind of trust but verify, run through well-known AI approaches, look at with the output, and then help train that particular model or that system. And one of the things I talked about a little bit earlier is using a lot of the data that an operator has to actually potentially build models. And it's actually within reach now for a lot of operators to actually start building their own models. And that will allow for basically first-hand knowledge or first-hand data of the network to help fuse into a data model that allows for potentially better behaviors, less hallucinations, and potentially more accurate transmission of data. It also goes back to the training systems we talk about, and then making sure we have human in the loop until you get to a sustainable, measurable outcome where potentially when you do say an AI system that gets some sort of insight or idea, that you're able to have enough trust in that it can basically take it to an automation system or a change in the network. But almost within the next 5 to 10 years, there will almost always be some sort of human in the loop on those systems for the critical infrastructure, I would expect, until those systems become more viable. We have seen very good approaches and capabilities within SON, and that's not necessarily it's a kind of, if you will, early AI. It's more machine learning, where SON was able to take measured outlets and then do automatic changes, and that allowed for very, very reliable increments of support for wireless networks. And Johannes and I have talked about this a lot, and Johannes, what's your view on that one? I think it's still there, but it's kind of, it's one of those systems. I think my experience has been that I've watched somebody like Google use AI to an incredible degree, and have amazing output. But the only thing I have with that solution is I see it from the outside. Google hasn't allowed you to go inside and see exactly what's being done and how they're doing it. But they're indicating that there's some pretty good stuff here. So there's a lot of stuff there that could be interesting, but it's a trust but verify approach just because of the reliability required.
That's exactly right. On the flip side, the infrastructure that the service providers deal with in general are very complicated. You have a lot of data points. So an argument could be made that these AI models could actually make more optimal decisions than humans, given the size of the data, right? So, that's an opportunity, really. But from a 5.9 perspective, Brian, like you said, I think there's an opportunity to make sure that the infrastructure, even the AI infrastructure and everything around it, redundancy, meets that 5.9 requirement. I think as time goes on, we see the telecom world and IT world kind of merging a little bit, right? So the way we think about infrastructure, you have disaggregation and you have network services being provided as virtualized or containerized software. So things of that sort. But when you make that happen, you still have to keep in mind that delivering this 5.9 requires efforts from the underlying infrastructure, from the hardware, from the power perspective, and that goes to the AI as well, right? So just keeping that in mind to make sure that none of that is compromised is important.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Johannes, because I find today a lot of decision making in a NOC, or just even from an executive level, is not always 100% because they're not able to absorb all the information fast enough to make a better decision. And I think AI in those particular cases could be much more informed and more accurate, and allow for these big organizations to deal much faster. Because as we know, operators typically, when they work on something, it takes a long time because it's very complex, it's big, and anything that can speed up the decision making is a huge advantage for them.
Yeah, I want to get into the AI powered NOC assistant that I know that we've helped develop and offer to our clients in and outside of the service provider organization. But before I do that, Johannes, I want to pull on that data string a little bit more. Certainly operators are sitting on mountains of data, from telemetry to network performance, usage, and so forth. That's not a situation that's exclusive to them. We hear that from clients across the board, that data in silos is an issue. How are we advising, or how are we helping our clients move from those silos of data into more actionable insights that are kind of ready to be consumed by an AI? Because you do need to do that first.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think in AI, and prior to that, we called it machine learning, and prior to that, data science and statistics, whatever you want to call it. The famous adage is, if garbage in, garbage out, right? Yeah. So And then truly, if you want to take advantage of AI, whether it's workflow automation or optimization, you need a good way of making sure that you have your data that's accessible, right? Your data needs to be clean, structured, and reliable. And that is really a culture within an organization of, okay, identifying what data do I need to capture, right? And then how do I make use of it? And how do I keep it up to date, right? So if the data is out of date and you get information from AI on that outdated data, then you lose trust, and it's going to be a problem to move forward. So I think focusing on your data that you need, and telcos do some a good job in terms of that data retention to some level, because there are some regulatory requirements in that space, right? So that's extremely important. But also when you think about, hey, how can I really leverage AI by bringing in this data? Even if you look at the big service providers that deliver services all over the country, you have a very distributed engineering team that, for example, in a given part of the country, has figured out how to optimize the network, right? So figuring that detailed configuration and how to do that for this complex network, and making sure that that knowledge get through to the other engineering teams all over the country, but gets optimized or tweaked to adapt for the local settings, is a challenging process and takes a long time, right? So, by the time you figure out, hey, there is this feature or parameter that I can optimize, to the time you get it rolled out in your entire infrastructure, it could actually take months or more than a year. So that's not surprising. So I think AI, even at this level, could play a huge role to optimize the deployment of solutions that are already understood as well. And that means a ton of money if you look at it from a customer experience perspective, if you look at it from man hours that is spent on that perspective, on the network, if you look at it from, hey, I've already purchased this feature or this capability from my vendor, and it usually costs me millions of dollars, but I haven't used it for a year. A lot of times, actually, features don't get used for multiple years. So that's investment you've already made. You just haven't had the opportunity to get to it. If you leverage AI and get to it, then you're saving a tremendous amount of money, right? So you're making good use of the capital investment you've already made.
And I just add that, we've just found there is a treasure trove of different data. As Yohannes is describing, there's different pockets of expertise. So it's really being able to make sure we get the data put in the right organizational structure, clean it well, so that we get rid of some of the bad data coming in, and then the operational capabilities above it, as Yohannes described, replicate that throughout the organization. So it's a both and. So really, we've done with the AI NOC is really we've started in one area. And then as we've cleaned and gotten really good data, let's say on the IP network, now we're getting into the access network. Now we're getting into the security network. Now we're getting into security apparatus. Now we're getting into the enterprise side, and being able to kind of lead by example and move that forward. It's a very, very large problem. All of the operators are kind of grappling with how they have different formats and different systems. So it's twofold. It's organizing the data and then bringing the right AI practice or hygiene to it and using it.
This episode is supported by WEKA. WEKA helps enterprises and research organizations achieve discoveries, insights, and outcomes faster by improving the performance and efficiency of GPUs, AI, and other performance-intensive workloads.
Yeah, certainly treating data as that strategic asset and giving it the the attention and care that it deserves is one of the key pillars that I know that we talk about in the WWT research that we've released to date. And by the way, for any of those listening out there, WWT.com has a lot of great research as it relates to AI, specifically in the service provider industry as well. So go check that out. Dave, once you have that kind of data estate in order, or you're on the right track, another key pillar is prioritizing high-value use cases. So walk me through some of the value add use cases that we see emerging right now? And I do want you to touch on in your answer the AI-powered knock assistant and why that is such a high-value use case at the moment. Is it just like that's an easy area to apply it and you can start to build momentum towards the larger things, or is it just providing immediate impact?
Well, so I'll kind of take those couple questions, add them together. So we have a number of really interesting approaches to the market. The AI knock, we would like to actually help for optimization of knock operations and more efficiency there, which I'll get into a little bit. We also have the churn reduction solution that we've run through that's actually been pretty interesting and has actually run really well. Every operator has a churn problem. We've also looked at documentation that feed into those particular systems. And then we have other solutions we're developing right now for security analytics and systems behind that to allow for more secure solutions, having AI look at that as well. I would say the AI knock is not trivial. We've seen a lot of people try it and not do well because they haven't really understood the full gravity of what you need to do, which is you just can't go in there with a tool and just lay it on the bench and then start running it. It's a series of tools, a series of approaches that you bring together, you fuse together, as well as interviewing the customer and understanding the way that they need to do business and how you need to tailor it for that particular area. And that's often overlooked, or it's brushed by, or it isn't optimized in a way that make those systems viable. So it was really interesting to see a couple of studies have come out that have shown that a lot of AI work has failed. And that has to do, I think, with not really putting the right rigor and the right discipline around it. When we've come in and worked on the AI knock, we've really looked at, okay, what is the problem? What is the business case? We start there. And then by identifying the business case, now it allows us to go and find the right tools, the right architecture, right solution, rather than starting with tools and solution first, and then trying to figure out how you're going to fix that use case. And I think that's a really great part of WWT and the way, at least we work together with customers. That's really allowed us a lot more flexibility to go through those particular functions. And really start solving the business problems and adding software where it's needed. It's been interesting in this journey that we've been going along. We initially had to go out there and build connectors to ServiceNow. We've had to develop connectors to Splunk, had developed connectors to other data retrieval systems. The system's been out there for a while in a couple of accounts we worked on. And since then, those providers like ServiceNow, Splunk, have actually built APIs or actually connectors, so we don't have to develop those systems in the past. So there's a recognition in the industry that this is a needed area. It is of great value. It's not trivial, but I think as you move through it, you get relatively easy to measure results. And from my experience, that's been excellent. And Johannes has been right in the middle of that too. I think some comments there make sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So just having a very focused discussion we found with the right business group within an organization to identify value is extremely important. Hey guys, real quick, is my video blurred?
Nope, you're coming in good. Okay. Yeah,
Great.
Feel free. I would just, Johannes, just start your answer over. But
okay.
Yeah, you're coming in good, loud and clear.
Okay, great. So I think having a very focused value discussion with the right stakeholders within an organization is extremely important to prioritize value, right? Say, okay, what are we going to get out of this? Is this better customer experience? Is this operational efficiency? Is this we're gonna make money by going through this AI deployment? And we found that to be very useful, just to ask those set of questions. That way everybody's aligned and right, you can go after some of those use cases. The other thing that's something that we've learned is there are reasonably achievable use cases that you can go to success rather quicker, right? I would say low-hanging fruits, and then there is the difficult use cases, right? So You want to go after some of the easier ones early on to build confidence and get credibility, so that you can go through some of the more complicated use cases that may take a little bit longer, right? So that there is the willpower and continued investment to make sure that you get the result. The other thing that we looked at in terms of achieving this, and Dave mentioned, the AI NOC is not a trivial solution. Is for any successful AI deployment, I would say 50% is a good understanding of the space you're working in, domain knowledge, right? And 50% is the AI capability, the tool sets, or I'll call it the computer science aspect of the business. A computer scientist that's extremely skilled in AI cannot come up with a solution to treat patients if they don't know anything about the medical industry, right? Or they don't understand about the human anatomy. So that's where you have to look at the same in the telco space. You need to understand the space very well. You need to understand how these networks operate and what matters to service providers, so that you can have the same conversation. So that's extremely important. And in the NOC case, what we've realized is there are a lot of tickets and outages that come up that consume a lot of time. And we saw that this AI solution really created a lot of efficiency. So that made a lot of sense. And over time, what we're trying to do is catch what's called a tribal knowledge. As you come through and resolve issues and tickets, some of the more seasoned technicians, engineers could look at an issue and figure out what's going on fairly quickly, because they've been in the industry long enough. They know that particular network, whatever the operator that they've been working with for quite a while, right? So they know that network like the back of their hand, and they do well. If you bring in more of a junior expert, or engineer to come in and look at the system, it's going to be a different experience. However, as the senior guys work through this problem, AI is able to capture it. Now you can have your, junior or mid-level guys perform at the level of the seasoned technicians, right? So I think that's a value that's usually underestimated, but over time could add a lot of value to service providers.
I want to shift gears a little bit to ROI, and something that so many of our clients struggle to articulate. How do we, knowing that service providers are under that pressure to constantly, on a quarterly basis, address churn, address revenue streams, so on and so forth, these AI investments are not cheap. How do we make the case, or how should we advise our service provider clients or any organization out there to think about how they articulate ROI back to their stakeholders, whether it be, Wall Street or their executives or their boards? Like, what is the equation here, Dave, with as it relates to ROI?
Yeah, well, I think it's ROI is, I would kind of change that to a little bit. So return on your investment, but it's also a return on your experience in that network. So if you have a really good experience in the network, you're going to have a better consumer attitude, and you're going to have more people who want to consume your service. So that's one aspect that I think operators are starting to go after, because if you look at the operators today, they're all competing pretty much on the same technology. Mm-hmm. And in the past, they've been competing on different technology, different coverage. One had the iPhone, one didn't, and that's how they differentiated. Now they've got to really go back and say, okay, how am I going to offer a really good experience, and then make sure that drives lower churn then. So that means more people are going to stay in the network. Churn is one of the number one line items in a quarterly report that everybody looks at, and that can make or break a stock from a landline perspective, from a wireless cable, any of those systems. That's a huge area. The other one to look at is really, how can I make my operations more efficiently? And I think that's the other metric, and that goes back to, how can I take and use my workforce more efficiently. Not necessarily am I going to reduce them, but how can I have that person that's enabled to make better, faster, more meaningful decisions? And that's where AI can really help as well. So we were the first things we did when we worked with service providers is actually brought in RAG models just for documentation. Mm-hmm. So documentation from Cisco, from Ericsson, Nuke, it's extremely exhausting, extremely difficult to go through. And being able to get accurate information allowed those planners to build much faster, much more accurate decisions, and then get that system in place faster. If you can in place a system faster, you can deploy something faster. Now you can be much more competitive in the market to deliver a better service. That's another system. So I talked about quality experience, the amount of workforce productivity and efficiency. And then the other one that's really implemented and needs to be further implemented is the network efficiency capability. So we're actually seeing gains of 20, 30% on, let's say, radio optimization or network optimization. Networks today, typically, there's no interaction between the application and the network. Basically, the application goes and sends something, and the network just has to absorb it and deliver it. There's no feedback mechanism. With AI, with those systems, we're going to be able to have a much more dynamic, much more capable network and leverage things like segment routing and other functions. So we can actually make sure that delivery is much more accurate and much more efficient. So I don't have to have just a tremendous amount of capacity and expense put into the network that I might not necessarily use all the time. So I can use it much more judiciously and support. Yeah. So I kind of look at, there's a lot of efficiency message there, Brian. We are looking for some top line growth messages as well to show that forward. But for instance, our AI knock can cut alarms down by 50%. Huge differentiator. It can actually help return back maybe 2 to 3 heads, so that they can actually do more predictive maintenance rather than reactive maintenance. So those are some of the areas that we're putting into the market, but it's an evolving approach.
Yeah. And Johannes, I'll shift gears on you a little bit too here. We're at the getting close to the bottom of the episode. I do want to make sure that we touch on security here. We haven't necessarily brought up cyber, but of course these networks are probably amongst the most highly targeted networks in the world. So what can we do from a cyber perspective to protect with AI and protect against AI? And then what does that mean for the broader non-service provider industry? Are these trends that they should be picking up on as well?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a great question. AI, right? So the attackers, whether it's your casual hacker or state agents, which are becoming more and more of a problem, right? So they're leveraging AI. That means they can exploit attack vectors quicker, and they can come up with new ways to attack the network and whatever infrastructure you want to call it now. And they it really democratizes the level of expertise that you need. Now you have an AI system that can come up and show you how you can inflict the maximum damage, which is a problem. The only way to counter that is to leverage AI on the defense side as well, right? So make sure you have the right partnerships. And one of the things that we're looking at is the cybersecurity space is very crowded, right? So it's not uncommon for whether service providers or enterprises to have multiple tools that they're using as part of their cybersecurity strategy. That by itself could create a gap, right? Because now you're juggling multiple tools, multiple vendors. I think getting to a more organized, having a good understanding, making sure you have a good platform that is AI aware, and there are some tools out there that we work with that constantly learn from threats that are discovered all over the world, whether it's network specific or enterprise specific is extremely important. The other thing you have to look at from a service provider space is just because you are leveraging AI, it doesn't mean you have to relax the security requirements that are around your infrastructure, the network. So if somebody did not have access to the data or to the network prior to AI, they shouldn't be able to access information or interact with the network through some of the AI tools that you're building. So making sure that some of the access controls that you have flow through to the AI systems, and doing your homework from that perspective is extremely critical. Also making sure that you procure some of these AI tool sets from trusted source, right? So securing the supply chain is extremely important. If you get models and AI tool sets that you don't trust, so it's like it could be an attack from within, which is a huge risk. So that's some things that to look at, Brian.
But I would ask you to add to that, Yohannes, and really good points. I think one of the things you just touched on is the persona of the devices, the persona of the user and of the devices. And then an understanding what AI allows us to do is look across the network and kind of get it. We overuse this term, but a digital twin of what the network's doing. As well as we can start to use AI to prototype the behavior of devices. And then obviously look and then interrogate those devices to say, what's the origination? What are they doing? And then what are they doing now? And that has been one of the largest game changers, because we do have AI coming in. We have state actors that are not coming in through malware anymore. They're using backdoors and things exploits that they've delivered. And you have millions of devices in these networks that are very difficult to inventory and understand. But AI has the ability to do a lot of that for us.
Yeah.
Give it base level. And I think this is what we've been talking a little bit about, is being able to use that. And then when we see abnormalities, we zero in on that area and interrogate, either remove or remediate or update. So I think that in and of itself, just being able to control devices and monitor them more efficiently is going to be one of the big deals. And there's going to be a number of tools, as Yohannes talked about, that will fuse into that. But that, I think, will be the bigger opportunity for us to secure our networks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Brian, if I may real quick, just go back to that ROI discussion, because I think that's important. Yeah. We get a bunch of questions on that one. The way I look at it, and Dave and I, we've talked about this for a while as well, is I don't think anybody, particularly the service providers, can afford to take the risk of being left behind, right? This is something that
they have to do.
You have to do, you have to play with, and you have to experiment with. And you can't just sit back and let this play out. You have to get your feet wet and make sure your organization understands it and build a culture. So if you don't do that, then the chances that you'll be able to control your operational cost is not going to be feasible, whether it's as a single service provider or as a service provider, as an industry as well. That means you're not going to achieve the multiples that the street expects, and it's going to be a challenge by itself. So how do you balance having to do this with the huge infrastructure investment it could require? I think what we have been saying to our clients is to make sure you look at the crawl, walk, run approach. Hey, identify the use cases, make the minimal investment that you need to prove out those proof of concepts and use cases, get some benefit out of it, build confidence, and then make additional investment to scale those operations that makes sense for you, right? So that's one conversation we're having. The other one is service providers have invested a ton of money over the past decade or so on data collection tools, automation tools, things of that sort that are not being utilized. So you've bought you've made this investment, you're paying these licenses, but you're not utilizing them because they're too complicated and you don't have the resources, right, to take advantage of it. So if you put an AI there to leverage off all this data and all this tool set, it's really protecting the investment you've already made. So you have to look at how much additional investment do I need to make in AI to get the benefit out of those tools versus how much am I already spending or have already spent. So that's a different list to look at it. I just wanted to share that quickly, Brian.
Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, let's just, we can wrap the episode here after this question, but, given, Dave, we'll start with you. Given what Yohannes just said, where, these service providers are investing in those data tools, those data collection and analytics, what does that mean for the service provider of the near and long-term future? What do they look like? How will they interact with their end users? Just give me a little bit of a future state as it relates to AI data and these operators.
Yeah, really good question. So as we move forward, I think operators are going to be able to offer a better user experience by leveraging their data. They have a tremendous amount of data that they can unleash and help customers offer better, have a better experience. So, and be able to use that data to, let's say, you have very good location information. You can feed that data with applications and services to offer better experiences moving forward. And what we've seen is that data behind a wall and not really exposed. And there's a lot of fear of doing some of that by the operators. I think as we use AI and we get better understandings of that and understand how to fuse that data with applications and services and other systems that are out there, we could see operators offering new experiences, so top-line growth capabilities for, let's say, differentiated data delivery. We could see, we're hearing some things about, let's say, AR and VR glasses that mobility can leverage and offer, really interesting experiences of being able to look at something and having your mobile network look that up quickly and deliver you some sort of insight on that, or use that as some way of recording conversations if you wanted to, or being, let's say, going through Paris and looking at something and saying, hey, I wonder what that is. And quickly we're referring back and saying, oh yeah, it's the Arc de Triomphe. This is the feedback behind that. There's a number of areas this can go in, and we're seeing the possibility of fusing a lot of what a hyperscaler does much more closely with what an operator does. And hyperscalers have this amazing treasure trove of innovation and ideas and systems and really amazing things that we use every day. And you have an operator that has all this amazing data of where the user is, what their likes, what they're doing in the network. And when you start to be able to fuse that together, the sky's the limit on new, really interesting things you can do. And I think potentially AI and fusing that data will allow that to start to happen in a more meaningful manner. Whereas in the past, it's been a clunky relationship. It's kind of been a adversarial many times. And, potentially in the future, it might be much more complementary.
Yeah. Yohannes, any closing thoughts on what you think the future holds? Either bouncing off what Dave just said or something else?
No, absolutely. I think Dave kind of touched on here how would the customer experience change and what value can service providers add. I would say on the flip side, I think the way service providers manage their network, the way they interact their network, right? Scrolling through a bunch of data and all the charts to see what's how the network is performing is going to be a little bit different, right? So it's going to be cleaner approach. You can ask and get the information using human language. I think to be able to provision services quicker, right? Then you don't have to do detailed configurations and buy new boxes. How do you do that? That's going to change a little bit. Troubleshooting is going to change. Being able to pinpoint in this complex network what's going wrong and fix it quicker so that customers are not impacted. I think that way we look at the network and manage it is going to be a little bit different as well.
Yeah. Well, great stuff. I mean, certainly an important conversation that, not just service providers, but, clients of all sorts and across all industries need to be considering. Dave, Yohannes, thanks so much for taking the time out of your calendars here today. And we'll have you on soon to have another conversation about AI in the service provider arena.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
Dave.
Okay, thanks to Dave and Yohannes for the great conversation. After listening, a few key lessons I think you should be taking from this episode. First, AI's value isn't found in grand promises. It's found in disciplined, deliberate progress. The service providers succeeding with AI are the ones starting small, cleaning their data, and choosing high-impact use cases they can measure and scale. Second, Trust is non-negotiable. In environments where reliability is everything, AI has to earn its place. That means human oversight, governance, and an uncompromising approach to accuracy before automation. And third, innovation only works when people are aligned. From engineers to executives, the most successful organizations bring everyone to the table early, defining what success looks like before the first model is even trained. The bottom line, AI can't just make networks smarter. It has to make them faster, safer, and more human in how they operate. The companies that get this balance right won't just keep the world connected, they'll redefine what reliable innovation looks like in the age of AI. If you like this episode of the AI Proving Ground podcast, please consider giving us a rating or a review. And if you're not already, don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. And you can always catch additional episodes or related content to this episode on WWT.com. This episode was co-produced by Naz Baker, Maggie Ryan, and Kara Kuhn. Our audio and video engineer is John Knobloch. My name is Brian Felt. See you next time.